Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting comics loving edition, storytelling loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be talking with author, creator Mike Dubisch. Mike, thank you for jumping in, joining me, and talking with me for a few minutes.
Sure, happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Happy to have you. I will mention a few works as I very often do. There is a little bit of a formula here, although I do occasionally break it. So you're actually known for adapting a series that many readers out there will know and listeners will know from their childhood, and that is the Boxcar Children. There are those out in the world. Is this true? Is my research correct?
You are correct, sir. That is the Boxcar Children, I believe, was the first series that I was associated with.
hmm
At the time, I'd already done a fair amount of more on-brand horror and science fiction stuff
hmm
in various venues. But in terms of a commercial property that was hiring me on to do interior comic book story adaptations, yeah, that was definitely the first to give me a shot at that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really it's really fun that sort of a whole you know I guess a generation, maybe a part of a generation anyway, of readers first saw my work in there.
Yeah.
And another thing that often happens is that people who otherwise weren't able to follow what I was doing, maybe people who I knew in my youth or whatever, and then they had kids and they really hadn't thought about me in years or looked at, gee, is Mike still doing artwork? And there I was
Uh,
on the Boxcar Children adaptations. So, yeah, definitely proud of the work we did there, and still, still definitely run into some Boxcar Children graphic novel fans once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned the horror and science fiction work, and that's actually where I was going to focus a little bit more. But just to mention that you have a range of books out there. The Creeps being one of those books that is more on the, as the title would suggest, more on the creepy side. And then you've also created in worlds like Mars Attacks and sort of the universe of Bela Lugosi and some of those story strands as well.
Yeah, that's true. Um, So with Mars Attacks, that was being when it was first being revived, and hadn't really been talked about or heard about in many years.
hmm
It was getting revived by a local comic book shop and underground comics publisher. Actually, one of, if not the first, U.S. underground comics publisher, historically speaking, Fanico Enterprises. And I'd been working with them on trying to contribute to these horror anthology comics that they were putting out that have since become kind of a cult classic kind of thing. Gore Shriek being the anchor
hmm
title.
hmm
And what happens is I sort of tried out for the Mars Attacks work. Um, and basically, due to my youth, I wasn't actually, because at the time I was still in high school, like a junior in high school or something. And due to my youth, there just wasn't really a way to get around the contract signing issues.
hmm
But they did take the story, it was such a thrill for me at the time. Stephen R. Bissett, who was the Swamp Thing penciler and a major horror historian across genres, had taken on the editing position at Gore Shriek, and he wanted to publish the story. And he just said, "Look, we can get around any copyright issues or anything as long as you just make them distinctly different from Mars Attacks."
hmm
So I added some extra tentacles and extra eyes on them, and we went ahead with that story. But otherwise, I wasn't really able to get involved with that era of Mars Attacks officially. But except for, that's right. I did secure a coloring credit. I was technically just
Mhm.
assisting Tom Vincent on coloring these literally mini comics. They were card sized
I remember
comics.
those. Yeah.
And yeah, so I did assist in coloring. I can't remember which work I assisted on. I remember that the art inside was very early and great work by Bruce Spalding Fuller, who is still associated with Gore Street Comics, but also has worked on numerous films and music videos and commercials and stuff as just an incredible practical effects guy. And then the other issue was drawn by the great Greg Capullo, who, of course, just finished, I don't know, a 20-year run on Batman or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and is now on to a 30, 40-year run on Marvel books. I'm not sure which one. He's showing every single character I've ever heard of as a preview. So I don't know what title he's on. But yeah, he started out in horror comics and was doing just some terrific work there before he got his break over at doing mainstream stuff. So yeah, Mars Attacks mini comics, card size mini comics, just definitely a footnote in history, but a fun one for anyone who was involved in the scene, and of course, kind of a stepping stone from the being ancient history to being a Tim Burton movie. I don't know how
Mhm.
much the card set and that little burst of publicity mattered. It was at the time the best selling independent comic book ever produced. That first issue, card sized issue. I don't know about it. Beyond that, I don't know.
No, no. Well, you seem like you're drawn to science fiction, horror, creating and crafting in some of those worlds. Curious about what connected you to that kind of storytelling.
It was pretty easy to get connected to that. I was just really lucky that my parents, even though they both dabbled in art but didn't take it terribly seriously. But they both enjoyed artwork and comics, and so um, my mom had some various EC horror comic paperbacks around. The little Ace paperback reprints, generally with Frank Frazetta covers. So
Mhm.
there you go. I was just really connected to that right away. I remember laying awake at night, scared to death because I was reading the October Country, the little paperback book of Ray Bradbury horror stories,
Yeah.
illustrated by EC artists with an amazing Frank Frazetta cover. And so I just that stuff was around, and surprisingly, on my dad's end, well, actually on both ends, my mom also had some underground horror or underground comics. I believe the Richard Corbin material, Den Neverwhere, was her book. My dad had some issues of heavy metal, but also a whole lot of like rip-off press comics, Wonder Warthog, the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, Greg Irons, Robert Crumb.
Mhm. Mhm.
Probably mom and dad probably both had a little bit of Crumb collections. So I was just exposed to that really early on. And then kind of a turning point for me was around the time when I was starting to get interested in comics again, buying like Conan and you know Marvel superhero Secret Wars and Spider-Man getting his black costume and stuff. And I was getting into all that, and I read a biography of William Gaines, and talked about him starting, his father basically inventing comic books, and then him starting the EC Comics.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the book really kind of captured the sort of the joy and the magic of working in EC Comics, and then at the same time, it told from his point of view, just this sort of attack Firstly by Frederick Wortham with Seduction of the Innocent, and then secondly by basically every other comic book company kind of just ganging up to be like, hey, we beat Wortham, but we're just going to roll over and say uncle anyway, and do everything that Wortham might have demanded in order to squeeze gains out of business and can kill the ECs. And so all that whole sort of mythology, this history, kind of got under my skin. And if I want, if you'd said, what do you want to do? Why are you doing this? Why are you making comics? What do you want to be when you grow up? I would have, the honest answer would have been, I want to be an EC comic book artist, even though this was a job that hadn't existed for, a decade before I was born, at least. But that was somehow what got under my skin. And that's what I wanted to do, which is, of course, why I get so much joy out of working on the now defunct The Creeps magazine and its successors, Vampirus and Shudder magazines. So yeah, get a lot of joy in being able to contribute to that format, just because it taps just right into the reasons why I do this sort of thing. So
that might actually answer partially the next question I was going to ask. I usually mention titles and things that I run across, but was going to ask about some of the most positive experiences that you've had, some of the most positive collaborations. So getting to be part of that particular magazine structure and the ongoing publications from that, I'm sure is very rewarding to be part of that history as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just really, really fun. I was in the 4th issue of The Creeps. And I was in the premiere issue of Vampirus Carmilla. So it's really been, even though I'm not I'm not the most prolific contributor to those series, I've at least been able to be, embedded in the early issues and throughout. And just really, really happy about it. There's a EC Comics, at least the label, is starting some new anthologies. They both have all new titles that I'm not going to try and recollect right now, but I thought they were really, really cool sounding. So you can imagine that there's part of me that's just like, I got to get into that.
Right. Yeah. The EC books they're really something else. And just talking about those connections with Ray Bradbury, I'm also a Bradbury fan, and just a very interesting way of telling stories in the comics form.
Yes. It was very, they took themselves more seriously, I suppose, at least in terms of, in terms of delivering. And I mean, I've read a lot of other pre-code horror, and I always enjoy the heck out of it. But when you realize that it's just like that, I mean, as late as the 80s, decades later, or 90s, I mean, they were able to take basically those same EC horror stories and put them to film and entertain a whole new audience with the same stuff from the 50s. And they're still in print, just incredibly, they're still in print. New color methods advance, and we better put out a new set of ECs with the new colors, and meanwhile, they're still getting reprinted in black and white and collected, and there's just something timeless about the work. The artwork can't be improved upon. It's just, to this day, it holds up as good or better than anything anyone has ever produced. And the simple story structure would seem like, oh, isn't that going to date those? But the fact that they were so over the top that I'll still see final panels from like Tales of the Crypt or Vault of Horror. It'd be like, this is a parody, right? This is contemporary. There's no way they
Mm,
went so over the top in 1954, but the answer is yes, they
they did.
did. So that's
Yeah.
another reason why, uh, just I mean, you could obviously point to Master Race, or uh, oh, unfortunately, I'm forgetting the title. The one about the robots and the astronaut who turns out to be African American in the finale. And these things are just still so relevant and so like objectively. But then just take that stuff, the Oscar winning stuff aside, and just go for the pure like impact. And
Mhm.
yeah, EC just still easily stands up, if not goes further still than some of what we still see. So yeah, great stuff. Still
Yeah,
enjoy it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, in terms of your creating, what currently has your focus? Any places where people should go to check out your work?
Yeah, sure, of course. I've promised my wife that for starters, I promote the project that we're doing together.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Please do.
uh, my wife Carolyn Watson Dubisch is in fact a graphic novel comic book genius who just churns out. She's just a yarn spinner, and it's in terms of like just churning out rollicking stories that just keep you engaged and bring you to fun places over and over again. She also pushes the limits in terms everything she does is for a younger audience, but she pushes the limits and sometimes, some of it, not this actually, but some of her own work I've described as like if Clive Barker was writing for children. It's just like such crazy stuff that would give them nightmares, but at the same time, they're just so full of joy and delight and just everything that a young reader, especially reluctant readers, are just drawn to. So her series, just real quick, are The Dragon in the Closet and After the Robots Died.
Mhm.
So for some time, we've been working on this project. The project itself is called The People That Melt in the Rain, but each new issue is going to come out with its own title.
Nice.
So in this case, we produce the artwork together. I have some contribution to the story and dialogue in that I'm the I'm the wall that it gets bounced off of,
Hmm.
and I'm there to pitch dialogue lines and even titles and stuff. Um, so Deluge was in fact my title, very much Carolyn's vision. And we have the first book out that contains the first two chapters, and the next book, Ghosts, is very soon upcoming with the next two chapters after this. And all of this material has been done for a little while. And so we're rolling it out, new issue every 8 months. Um, it's basically double sized, um, square bound, and painted covers, and all full color interior art.
Lovely,
So,
lovely.
and this is again great book for all ages. YA loves it. YA audience loves it. In this, basically the first chapter is called "A New Girl in Town." Indeed, it's about uh, teenage Laura coming to a new town and discovering that she's trapped there, and that is a place of magic and mystery and suspense.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't go into any further details. Very easily found on Amazon with more descriptive elements pitching the story. But really, really proud of this, and it's going to be coming out for several years to come, and
Nice,
hopefully
nice.
find a great new audience. This is my book, The Earthlings.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
is this is my first prose novel, if you will. It's really more of a collection of linked stories that's about novella or even novelette size. But it is all my story, and it is illustrated. So full page,
Nice, nice.
black and white, very and this is science fiction
Hmm, hmm.
with it's really just pure science fiction. Um and uh it's it's a trip. That's all I'll say. Again, the any sort of pitch for it is available online. But abandoned by their gods, forsaken by their overseers, discover a world where humanity has been bioengineered by alien gods into a diverse array of new races, ranging from the minuscule to the colossal in the Earthlings. So, and it's adult material. So,
Interesting.
we're continuing to put out through Oddness Books,
Uh-huh.
Mystery Meat by author Cody Goodfellow. Now, this again, full on tribute to the EC Comics,
I could see that.
and
Yeah.
even more so to the underground horror comics that came that were both a response and a parody and a tribute to EC Comics. And so this is a wild send up of the meat and fast food industry. It's quite epic. Again, adult material. Cody's script is brilliant. And we are continuing to have this available in several different formats with in terms of how adult the cover is, how fancy the format is, etc. So I think right now we're looking into this is a great square bound edition. We've been selling at cons and it's probably available at Barnes and Noble. Ultimately, we're looking at putting out a fancy hardcover edition with more facsimile like saddle stitch, stapled underground comic versions of it as well. So this was a really neat thing that we ended up doing because of its sort of social consciousness theme. It got us into the actual underground eco horror comic Slow Death, which I also have a copy of over here. Let's see. Oh, shit. I grabbed the wrong one.
That's
Okay.
okay.
Well, anyway,
I'll put an image up on the screen of it. That'll work. Yep.
Fantagraphics, or no, not Fan. Last Gasp. Last Gasp Comics put out a final issue of their long-running comic Slow Death. The first issue I think came out the year before, either the year I was born or the year before. And it's only been about 13 issues total, I think. And then with the final one being a book-sized Slow Gasp or Slow Death Zero with a new William Stout cover. One of, if not the last comic story by Richard Corbin, one of the original contributors. Contains some work by Crumb. Contains the last work published by some of the previous contributors. The truth is that I keep mixing it up in my mind with this. The final issue is that, and in my mind I'm like, was that in Slow Death Zero or was that in Zap 16? You can see the level of confusion is so high. I grabbed this book, meaning to grab Slow Death Zero. I've got them next to each other on my shelf. I may have to change that arrangement. So anyway, the Mystery Meat kind of served as a audition tape to be in the actual underground comics. Additionally, from Oddness, we have a collection of the Crypt Kid. Again, we may see this brought back down to saddle stitched issues again sometime in the future, and available in comic shops. But what we've been selling through Barnes and Noble and at the conventions is this graphic novel collection of the Crypt Kid. And this is another one that I both wrote and drew, created all on my own. Um, and is just sort of a gothic horror, um, with just the unusual anti-hero of a flesh-eating ghoul as as the character, as the heroic character, with the idea being, it is a ghoul design of my own invention. I haven't seen ghouls depicted exactly like this other places. It's not Lovecraft's ghouls.
Yeah. Oh.
It's not Neil Gaiman's ghouls quite from the Graveyard book, though I did like those a lot, and they inspired me a little bit as I was creating this, which I had already started. But yeah, he's an anti-hero. The idea being that a ghoul wants to eat rotten human flesh, and so is of no particular threat to a living human. So so his help is enlisted to an even greater threat. Oddness has also collected a number of my short, mostly full color horror comics, including the story that ran in Bela Lugosi's Tales from the Grave. Bela has been edited out because he's a different copyright, but they very kindly allowed us to reprint the story otherwise exactly as it appeared in Bela Lugosi's Tales from the Grave #2, which I imagine if you didn't get it when it came out is probably not the easiest comic to come across. Additional, that with the same description as the Wet Nurse. Originally, the Wet Nurse came out from a Strange Eons magazine. Strange Eons was sort of a heavy metal type magazine with a focus on H.P. Lovecraft. That ran for several issues, and they were willing to publish really wild, crazy stuff in full color. So I brought them the Wet Nurse, and they did a limited run that quickly sold out and became semi-legendary. And so we're very pleased to be able to represent the Wet Nurse in this collection as well. So, and then it's got some other things, including Among the Monsters, which is another oldie but goodie. This originally appeared in Raw Media Mags, which was a sort of multi-genre anthology that came out from the Faust team of Tim Vigil and David Quinn back in the early 90s. So I used to see that in back issue bins quite a bit for a while. I haven't seen it out in the wild for a while, but anyway, this was written by my friend Bill Townsend, who owns Electric City Comics in Schenectady, and had also worked with Greg Capullo and those guys at Fanico when they were just starting out. So kind of neat to get Bill back into print. And then finally, at least amongst the stuff that's, I've got a couple more things to share. Just a quick look, since I've already talked about the Vampirist Carmilla books. Here's a mostly recent issue that I did have a story print in. Another recent issue that I had a story print in. Both these magazines look terrific, just like the old stuff. And here's issue 1 of Vampirus that I had a science fiction story in here. I think all of them probably written by Don Glutt, at least 90% of them. The other thing that I do is this magazine, Forbidden Futures.
Nice.
And
there's the science fiction.
Yeah, it's fully, this is a fully all genre weird fiction, with definitely a big focus on science fiction. What we do at Forbidden Futures is we take my wildest artwork, we give it to our favorite writers, and they turn in new original short fiction based on the artwork.
Love it. Love it.
So, so every issue, I mean, we get some really great people. Um, Again, basically our writer author in residence, Cody Goodfellow, submits a lot of work. We got Brian Asman in this issue. There's Cody's piece. In issue 10, we had David Gerald, who has done some very well-known work for Star Trek, among some other of his own things. And it's basically as lavishly illustrated as humanly possible and still provide story. So we've been doing a little bit with some public domain stuff. Here we have Andre Norton. In the current issue, we have a story by Robert E. Howard. And we are bringing a lot of the old stuff back. Here is that aforementioned Mars Attacks comic.
Yes.
Reprinted very nicely and at a much larger size from the original Gore Streak art. And we print brand new comics when I have them ready in the issues as well. So here's one that's only available here for now, De-Extinction Event. So my story and artwork, about a 15-page comic. So whenever possible, we have comics. I've agreed to write new short fiction for them whenever I don't have a comic ready. And yeah, very excited about the Forbidden Futures project. We're hoping to get that. It's already available everywhere on barnesandnoble.com and at forbiddenfuturesmagazine.com. You can order directly, as well as those graphic novels that I mentioned, all available there, and both those places. And yeah, and hopefully we'll be looking at some wider distribution to comic stores very soon. But until then, you know, the online is really the best place to go is Barnes and Noble, and also the Forbidden Futures website. So one final project I wanted to bring up. And I don't bring all this stuff up because I'm going over like the last 5 years accomplishments. All these things this is all like what's going on right now.
You're very prolific. Yeah.
So the Adventures of Dario Bava, Paranormal Playboy, is this fantastic adventure written by Phil Mucci, created by Diabolic Films. And Phil Mucci has directed music videos for Metallica and other heavy metal bands, and is just a terrific independent filmmaker. And this is his vision for Dario Bava was too immense to do as a comic, to do as films. So we're doing them as a series of graphic novels and comics. We started with this massive murder vibes from the monster dimension. And we're currently working on Orgy of the Blood Freaks. So he fights a lot of vampires. And it's a mix of just wild gothic fantasy, ultra violence, tribute to Italian horror gore film, scathing critique of the Catholic Church. It's got vampires. It's got werewolves, Nazi werewolves, of course. They're Nazi werewolves, and see. One more thing. All right, and no, this isn't it. Okay. What I do have, I showed you a lot of stuff with the digital color. This a little bit. Every once in a while, they put out a little black and white preview. This shows a little bit more about what my contribution is to the project,
Nice.
to these line art. So they've been. You mentioned, who's been great to work with. The Diabolic people are the best, just the
Mm,
best ever. So appreciative, so generous, and just super duper creative. That just absolutely, um, just absolutely the best. To work with, you know, uh, really exciting that there's just so much more of that world to explore still. So
yeah.
we've got that to look forward to. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. If anyone's still watching, that's the that's pretty much the rundown of what is out there now with my name on it.
Quite a range. By means of a final question, we have about a minute left. Would you like to jump back in to catch any like upcoming conventions, things like that, and then I can weave the videos together?
I am. I will be at Comic-Con San Diego as per usual at the Forbidden Futures booth, and hopefully you'll see me roaming in the wild a little bit. Um, and no, I just the only message is buy comics, love art. Don't let the changing situation get you down.
Mhm.
Just keep loving the stuff that you love. I went to a comic shop the other day with my friend, and bought what I could, and spent the next week just thinking about all the other things that I wanted and wishing I could go back there. I've got a little stack of new stuff,
You were
next to
saying there are
me.
always more comics to buy.
Yes, that is very true. There are always more comics to buy. If you're lucky enough to have a local library, that's a great way to keep up with a lot of titles that you might not otherwise have wanted to or been able to invest in. Um, but and so and of course more comics than you could count available to read online in varying different formats and levels of legality.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I personally, if I love it, to find one of these sites, and hopefully they're not too janky with the pop-up ads, but if you can find one that works well for a while, you can read a lot of great old stuff.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of pre-code stuff available on I don't know the website off the top of my head, but there's public domain sites where you can read just about everything that's pre 1939 and more so just anything that is lapsed into the public domain, and that's great stuff that we're all out there buying fancy reprints of ourselves,
Right.
so you can read all that for free online. I love how stuff. I love how it all looks in print.
True.
I
True.
honestly have I have both read comics online that I didn't have my print copy handy, and I just really really wanted to reread it. And
Hmm.
then I have also purchased comics that I have read in detail, read very carefully online, and said, no, I still need to own a copy of that. Um, but I hate to tell people you got to spend money. So yeah, just use your local library, read comics online. It is one of those investments that just seems to just keep bringing you joy
Hmm.
too. So $3.99 spent on a comic book is going to last you a lot longer than $3.99 on a I don't know, on a latte if you could find a 3.99 latte.
True. True. Yeah.
So you split, it's going to bring you, and then that half a latte that you split with your friend. Um, but you know, and you can find also. I always generate first to the used bin, the half
Hmm.
price bin, comb through that stuff first. I always comb through that stuff first and find my favorite things in there. So and then there's just there are just so many comics out there that there are just a lot of them are in the bargain bins just because they've got to move them.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't bought comics for a while, go buy some comics. But either way, just hope everybody just keeps enjoying this very human made medium, this very emotionally uh, direct medium that is kind of. I read somebody yesterday, within the last couple of days, somebody was just like, "No, comics are basically just the source of all coolness." It just
Love it.
there's just you don't even have to explain it. There's just something about comics that just goes beyond. We all love movies. A lot of us love reading, science fiction and horror novels. But man, there's just something about the comic book medium that when you find something that you love, and I think that's partly because it's just so direct. It's so
Mhm.
just the very fact that it's the only medium. Dan Klaus said it was the only medium where you require no collaboration, where the writer can create the visuals, and those visuals feed directly to the reader.
Mhm.
And at
Mhm.
no point do we require actors, directors, or even the reader's imagination, because the reader is getting the full experience. Whereas in a novel, there's a certain collaboration between the author and the reader who imagines the visuals in their mind, and it is filtered through the audience's
Mhm.
perceptions, whereas comics are the only ones where it's the only medium where it's just, this is direct, this
Mhm.
is the story, this is what you're supposed to be seeing and hearing in your mind. So it's a magical medium. um, and um, and I guess that's all I have to say about it. And of course, keep enjoying art and illustration and all things that are the product of human creativity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll be sure and link your website that you mentioned. And I greatly appreciate the time. I appreciate the prolific creating and continuing to generate sort of the history of comics and the history of this kind of storytelling that it sounds like we both love.
I really appreciate the time, Jason. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks so much.